Imagine you spend a decade building your absolute dream house. You lay every brick perfectly, you install the best windows, you hire these top-tier interior designers.
Right, sparing no expense.
Exactly. But right before you pour the foundation, you intentionally breed a colony of termites and release them directly into the floorboards.
Oh, wow.
Sounds completely insane. But when it comes to the architecture of your own life, you might actually be doing exactly that without even realizing it.
Yeah, it really is the ultimate paradox of human behavior, I think. You can spend, all your energy constructing the visible parts of your life,
Yeah.
your career, your financial portfolio, your public reputation. But at the same time, you might be completely ignoring this invisible rot that's dismantling your structure from the inside out.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. If you are the kind of person who is just exhausted by the modern treadmill of collecting random facts and you want to extract real, usable understanding to make better decisions,
Yeah.
you're exactly where you need to be. Today, we're looking at a literal masterclass in everyday decision-making drawn from ancient wisdom. Specifically, we're looking at the text of Proverbs chapter 14. And our mission today is twofold, really. First, we're going to summarize the profound insights here. And second, we are going to aggressively translate these thousands of years old insights into a modern, practical blueprint for your life right now.
And what makes this specific text so powerful is that it really doesn't bother with vague philosophy,
No, it doesn't hold back at all.
It doesn't. It draws this brutal side-by-side comparison between the outcomes of wise, intentional choices and the inevitable consequences of careless, arrogant behavior. It treats the trajectory of your life as a completely predictable result of your internal character.
Okay, let's unpack this because the text immediately introduces this concept of building your own life. It points out that a wise person builds their house, but a foolish person literally plucks it down with their own hands.
Right, tears it apart.
Yeah. And then it pairs that with this incredibly visceral biological imagery. It says, "A sound heart is the life of the flesh, but envy is the rottenness of the bones."
That's such a striking visual.
It really is, and that's where my termite analogy comes from. You can have the fresh paint, the perfectly manicured lawn, but if your internal attitude is consumed by envy, the framework of your life is rotting.
Yeah.
But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Is it really that extreme? I mean, everyone gets a little jealous scrolling through social media, right? Does a little bit of professional envy really rot the bones and destroy the house?
It actually does. And the ancient authors understood something that modern medicine is really only just now confirming with brain scans.
Wait, really? Brain scans?
Yeah, let's look at the historical context first. In the ancient Near East, your house wasn't just, a nuclear family living in the suburbs.
Right, not just a mom and dad and a white picket fence.
Exactly. It was a massive multi-generational economic engine. It was an agricultural center, maybe a textile mill, a full-blown business. And the stability of that entire enterprise depended entirely on the internal cooperation and emotional regulation of the people running it.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Yeah, so if the leaders of that household are driven by bitter jealousy or resentment toward their neighbors, they make irrational, destructive decisions that actively tear down their own security.
So they aren't just sitting around feeling bad. They are actively making terrible strategic choices for the whole household because their ego is bruised.
Precisely. And biologically, the text is shockingly accurate. Modern psychology and physiology show us that chronic resentment, envy, anger.
Just living in that state of stress.
Right. It keeps your nervous system in a constant state of threat. You are dumping cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream all day long.
Which feels terrible, by the way.
It does. And that prolonged allostatic load literally suppresses your immune system. It increases inflammation. It genuinely deteriorates your physical health. The ancients observed this psychosomatic connection thousands of years before we had MRIs.
That is wild.
So cultivating peace, having a tranquil, sound heart, it actually promotes physical life. While envy is quite literally a disease that eats away at your structural integrity.
Okay, so let's say I get my mindset right. I stop comparing myself to my neighbors. I manage my stress. I have a sound heart. My house is termite-free.
Sounds great.
Right. So that means my life should be pretty smooth sailing from here on out, right?
Well, that is the exact trap most modern self-help gurus want you to fall into.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the illusion that a peaceful mind equals an effortless life, but the text shatters that completely.
It brings in the ox.
It brings in the ox. There is this incredible observation in this wisdom that says, where no oxen are, The crib is clean, but much increases by the strength of the ox.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because let's translate that for someone who doesn't live on a farm. A clean crib means an empty feeding trough, right? Like a pristine barn.
Exactly.
And I feel like modern society is completely obsessed with selling you a clean barn. We are bombarded constantly with the promise of, passive income, 4-hour work weeks, automated businesses.
Oh, the life hacks.
Yes, life hacks that supposedly give you all the success with literally none of the friction.
Yeah.
The promise is that you get the harvest without doing the heavy lifting.
What's fascinating here is that that is a complete fantasy. In an agrarian society, an ox was like $1 million piece of heavy machinery.
Right.
It was your tractor, your capital investment, and your main engine for wealth. But owning an ox brought a massive, daily, exhausting workload.
Because it's a huge animal.
Exactly. You had to feed it constantly. You had to care for it. And to be blunt, you had to shovel the literal manure it left in your barn every single day. The barn wasn't clean anymore. It was chaotic. It was loud. And it was really messy.
So the text is telling you that if you want a perfectly clean, stress-free life with zero complications, you can absolutely have it. Just don't get an ox.
Right. But if you don't get the ox, you don't get the harvest. You starve. The brilliance of this application for your life today is the realization that growth
Of any kind, really.
of any kind, whether you are building a startup, pursuing a tough degree, or trying to forge a deep, meaningful relationship, it always brings profound complexity. It brings mess. Meaningful success requires you to accept the manure, embrace the complexity, and put in the exhausting effort.
Which ties perfectly into the warning right next to it, where the text says that all actual labor brings profit, but merely talking about it leads to poverty.
Yes.
But wait, in modern business, this isn't talking kind of the whole job, like networking, ideating, pitching. My whole career involves talking to people. Is this ancient wisdom telling me that networking is going to make me broke?
Well, there is a massive difference between strategic communication and empty ideation. The text is targeting that universal human tendency to substitute the feeling of progress for actual progress.
Oh, man. I am definitely guilty of that.
We all are. When you sit around a whiteboard mapping out a brilliant app idea, your brain releases dopamine. It feels incredibly rewarding. You feel like an entrepreneur.
But you haven't actually built anything.
Exactly. You haven't written a single line of code. You haven't shoveled any manure. The ancient wisdom is warning you that if your life is entirely composed of talking about the harvest while actively avoiding the messy labor of the ox, you will end up in poverty. Execution is what separates the wise from the foolish.
So progress means I have to get my hands dirty. I have to navigate the mess. But as soon as you step into that chaos, you are immediately forced to make difficult choices. You have to figure out how to ensure you are going in the right direction when the options are, frankly, completely overwhelming.
And that is exactly where human intuition utterly fails us. The text introduces one of its most famous warnings. It says there is a path that seems completely right to a person, but it ultimately leads to ruin, or what the text calls the ways of death.
This reminds me of blindly following a faulty GPS.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Have you ever been driving at night, you're exhausted, and you just want to get home? You type in your destination, and the screen shows you this brilliant, hidden shortcut.
And you want to believe it so badly.
You desperately want to believe it. It aligns perfectly with your desire to beat traffic. Your spouse might be sitting in the passenger seat saying, I don't think this dirt road is a highway. But you ignore them. You follow the glowing screen because it just seems right to you. It feeds your ego. And you just keep driving, ignoring all the literal warning signs until the GPS drives you straight into a lake.
That is the perfect modern equivalent of confirmation bias, which is exactly the psychological mechanism the ancient text is exposing here. In your life, you are constantly drowning in information. But the text points out that a foolish person simply collects data that confirms what they already want to do.
Right. They just want to be told they're right.
Yeah, they mock actual wisdom because true wisdom often requires you to admit that your initial instinct is just wrong.
It requires you to admit you are driving toward a lake.
Yes, exactly. The text contrasts the fool with the prudent person. It says the prudent person looks well to their going. They don't just act on what feels attractive or easy in the short term. They seek to understand the hidden mechanisms of their choices.
They actually evaluate the route.
Right. They pause, they seek outside counsel, and they interrogate their own motives. Because a decision that feels incredibly satisfying to your ego today might carry deeply destructive, compounding consequences a decade from now.
So this true understanding, this ability to pause and critically evaluate the path ahead, it obviously protects you from driving your own life off a cliff.
Yeah.
But what I find really fascinating is how this internal compass inherently changes the way you treat the people around you. Like your private character starts leaking out into your public community.
It has to. Wisdom in this tradition is never just a private intellectual exercise. It is profoundly social. The text talks about how the mouth of a foolish person is a rod of pride, while the lips of the wise preserve them.
And a rod is a weapon. It's used to bludgeon someone. So what does this all mean when we look at today? I look at our digital landscape, our social media feeds, basically our real-time manifestation of people using their mouths as a rod of pride to beat down their neighbors.
That is a highly accurate diagnosis, unfortunately. In modern public discourse, whether online or in corporate boardrooms, arrogant speech is often disguised as, being authentic or telling it like it is.
Right. I'm just being brutally honest.
Exactly. But the text reveals the truth. Using your words to belittle others is just the external symptom of an insecure, foolish mind trying to establish dominance. Thoughtful, measured speech, on the other hand, builds credibility and preserves the social fabric. But the ancient wisdom doesn't stop at just being polite. It establishes a much heavier ultimate metric for your personal integrity.
And that metric is how you treat the people who can do absolutely nothing for you in return.
Mm-hmm.
The text is incredibly direct about this. It says that if you oppress the poor, you are actually reproaching your maker.
Yeah.
But if you honor your maker, you show mercy to the vulnerable.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, to understand the weight of that, you really have to look at the philosophical landscape of the ancient Near East.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Well, in many neighboring cultures at the time, the poor and the vulnerable were viewed as cursed by the gods. If you were a beggar, it was because the divine realm had rejected you, which meant the wealthy elite had zero moral obligation to help you.
Because you deserved it, essentially.
Right. In fact, ignoring you or exploiting you was seen as aligning with the will of the gods.
Wow. So this text completely inverts that entire worldview.
It shatters it. It introduces the radical concept of the imago Dei, the idea that every human being carries the image of the divine. By stating that oppressing a vulnerable person is a direct insult to the Creator, the text is saying that your theology, your grand beliefs about the universe, are completely fraudulent if they don't result in tangible compassion for the marginalized.
That is powerful.
It is. You cannot claim to honor the architect while you are actively destroying the architecture.
It's not just about being a nice person. It is a cosmic alignment. How you treat the barista, the janitor, the person sleeping on the street, it is a direct, real-time reflection of your respect for the divine.
And that brings us to the ultimate foundation of all this wisdom. The source material culminates by explaining that applying these principles doesn't just make you successful or polite. It fundamentally strengthens your trust and relationship with God. It introduces this phrase that can be very, very confusing to modern ears, the fear of the Lord. It says this fear brings strong confidence, and it is a fountain of life that protects you from the snares of death.
I really want to unpack that word fear because it trips so many people up. When you hear fear of the Lord, the immediate mental image is like a tyrant in the sky waiting to strike you with lightning if you step out of line.
Yeah, a very punitive image.
Right. But I like to compare it to the deep, healthy respect a seasoned sailor has for the ocean.
Oh, that's a vital distinction. I love that.
Yeah, if you are an experienced sailor, you don't cower in terror in the bottom of your boat, paralyzed by the thought that the ocean is a monster trying to eat you. You love the ocean. But you have an immense, profound respect for its power. You study the currents. You watch the weather patterns. You don't hide from the water, but your deep reverence for its absolute reality dictates every single way you rig your sails and steer your ship.
Because if you decide you are smarter than the ocean will sink you.
Exactly. You don't get to negotiate with a hurricane.
And that reverence, that cognitive realignment to reality is what the text means by the fear of the Lord. This raises an important question. How does this build trust? Well, it provides your ultimate moral compass. When you actually apply these practical proverbs to your life.
When you actually do the work.
Yes. When you make the difficult choice to root out the envy rotting your bones, when you decide to embrace the exhausting, messy reality of the ox instead of chasing passive shortcuts, when you actively show mercy to the vulnerable instead of crushing them, when you do all that, you start to witness the mechanics of this wisdom in real time.
You see that the GPS doesn't drive you into the lake anymore.
Precisely. You realize this isn't just an arbitrary list of restrictive rules designed to make you miserable. It is a literal blueprint for human flourishing. It is the fountain of life. As you experience the protection and stability that comes from making prudent choices, your confidence in God's design naturally grows.
It proves itself.
It does. Your daily trust deepens not because of blind faith, but because you are actively participating in the wisdom of the Creator and watching it protect you from the hidden snares of your own ego.
Well, we have covered some truly massive ground today. We've taken an ancient text and seen how incredibly relevant it is to your life right now. We've explored how your everyday decisions, the invisible attitudes you harbor, your willingness to shovel the manure of real progress.
Can't forget the manure.
Definitely can't forget that. Your ability to pause before following a deceptive path, and the way you wield your words and resources for the vulnerable. These are the tangible expressions of a life built on a solid foundation.
It is the daily, gritty translation of ancient moral principles into a stable, flourishing modern life.
But I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought from this text. It's a verse we actually haven't touched on yet, but it acts as the silent undercurrent to everything we've discussed today. It is verse 10. The heart knoweth his own bitterness, and a stranger doth not intermeddle with his joy.
That is perhaps the most psychologically profound statement in the entire chapter.
It really is. Think about what that means for you. You have an incredibly complex, vibrant internal world. Nobody else, not your spouse, not your closest friends, not your colleagues, nobody fully understands the depth of your hidden struggles, your secret bitterness, or your purest, most quiet joys. You are fundamentally alone in your own mind.
Yeah.
That means the application of this ancient wisdom, the decision to build your house rather than tear it down, the choice to steer your ship with reverence, it is ultimately a deeply intimate, entirely personal journey between you and the divine. No one else can do the internal blueprinting for you. So with all of this ancient wisdom now in your hands, how will you apply this information in your life?